Hi, how's your dog doing? Okay, so we are back with another unscripted video. I'm still working on the regular formatted Tokipona video that will be out at some point. So, I'm putting this in here just to give you guys something to watch and so that I do not completely fall off the face of the earth to everybody. So that's why this video is being made right now. So by the title of this video, which I hope I'm keeping the same, this video is going to be about becoming a polyglot. And just as a quick disclaimer, I actually am in favor of becoming a polyglot. I want to become one myself. I am not saying this from the perspective of somebody who does not want to become one. But I do think that those who are interested in it should be aware of some things that they should... This is pretty much just going to be some things that people should be aware of before they truly decide if they want to become one or not. I mean, it's not like it's an unreversible decision or something, but, you know, just it's to see if it's for you, I suppose you could say. So I do have a couple of notes here for me to use for reference. And the first one is obviously the time commitment. It's going to take a lot of time for you to become a polyglot. It's definitely going to take a couple of years, and it might even take a couple of years to become fluent at one language, let alone multiple. Now, you probably should take that into account. Like, maybe your job is really busy, or you're just a busy person, or you're just always doing a lot of things. You should take that into account, that you're gonna have to find time to learn a language, and if you don't spend any time on it, you're gonna forget what you're learning. If you don't work to keep up a language that you've already learned, you're gonna start forgetting it. No matter how good you are, if you do not speak it, you're forgetting it. Like, that's essentially how it works. If you are not using the language, I'd say if you are not using the language like once a week, you are forgetting it. Now, it's not going to be like you completely forget it after not speaking it for 2 weeks, not doing anything in it for 2 weeks, but you might start to forget some things. You might miss a word or two when you do some reading. You might have a little bit more trouble understanding a native speaker when you speak to them. That is something that you have to be aware of, that this is not something that you do for a month or two and then you can just have it there forever. You have to maintain it. I guess an analogy is like exercising. You know, you get to a certain point, you have the muscle, you have the abs or something, whatever you wanted. That doesn't mean you just get to stop going to the gym. You still have to go to maintain your body, and you might even have to work harder to maintain what you've already done. You can go away for a week or two, but you do have to still do it consistently. And that's something you're going to have to be aware of. There's probably somebody you know who learned a language in like high school or college or something and was actually a pretty good speaker. Maybe they even spent time abroad to a country where they speak it, and then they lost it. That could be one of your parents, it could be one of your friends, it doesn't really matter who, somebody you know has probably learned a language before and got decently good at it, and then they just lost it because they didn't use it. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit with a week. Maybe it's a month or something like that. I don't know. But even if it is longer than a week and then you start to forget stuff, why not still at least try to do something in one of your target languages once a week? I mean, at that point, if you're only using it once every couple of months, what's the point of even learning it? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not using it decently consistently, what's the point? Unless you're doing it just to be able to seem impressive and say that you speak, just to say, oh yes, I speak Hebrew. Oh, I speak Russian. I speak Polish. I speak Italian, whatever. At that point, what's even the point of learning the language? There are much easier things that you can do that'll be a lot more impressive to other people. So that's a pretty obvious one. Another point I wrote down here, I might come back to the time commitment eventually, but another point I wrote down here is that at some point, you're probably going to have to learn a language in order to learn another language. Now, what do I mean by that? So if anyone here has seen a YouTuber named called Decaglossai, that's probably not correct Greek pronunciation, probably something Decaglossai, or Decaglossai, I don't know. I'm embarrassing myself right now, but anyway, I think he's actually a university professor. Like, I remember I did some research, and I'm pretty sure he's a university professor at Princeton. Not gonna out him though. You can find that out yourself. But anyway, a point he brought up is that some languages you're gonna probably, if not the first languages you learn, should probably be French, German, or Italian. Now, why is that? Well, plenty of languages, well, no, let me phrase it in a better way. Certain communities are going to have better and more abundant resources for other languages. And that's just going to be the way it naturally is. If you are a monolingual English speaker, you only speak English, you've never learned any other language before in your entire life, and you want to learn, let's say, Sanskrit, it's going to be a lot harder to learn as an English speaker than if you spoke some other language, because the resources are probably going to be easier to learn in another language. Another added benefit is that if you learn another language and it's a related language, you can kind of skip stuff that you've already learned from another language. Like, for example, as a Spanish speaker, I've been speaking it since I was pretty young. Learning Latin honestly wasn't as hard for me as it would be if I were a monolingual English speaker, because I'm already used to conjugating verbs all the time. I was already used to a lot of the tenses that were shown to me, and I could even understand where they came from or how they got into their Spanish forms, you could say. Whereas for an English speaker, the idea of conjugation might be something completely novel that they have never heard of before in their entire lives. I have plenty of friends who have no idea what the word conjugation means, and the concept, when I explained it to them, they understood it once I explained it to them eventually, but it was a bit of a learning curve. So something like that is going to be a lot easier to speak a language like that. If you speak Russian and you want to learn Polish, since they're both related Slavic languages, they might skip some of this stuff like cases and verb conjugations. Not they'd skip like the tables or whatever they have there, but they'd skip introducing you to the concept because you'd already understand it. And also some resources are just better. Like, for example, a lot of resources for learning languages in French and German are a lot better than English resources, and to a lesser extent Italian. Like, for example, if you want to learn ancient Greek, the main sources for learning ancient Greek in English are not very good at all, I will say that. The best source for learning ancient Greek is the Italian Athanase book. Now, that book is not perfect. It does kind of expect you to have some basic knowledge of ancient Greek beforehand. But honestly, that's not too hard to learn. That's mostly like the alphabet and probably like a couple of cases. I don't actually know that myself. I don't know that from experience. I don't own the book, but I've heard that it just requires some basic knowledge of ancient Greek. Just a couple of things. Like, it doesn't start you from the very beginning. So it requires you to understand some basic things, but not entirely. But that is definitely the best resource for learning ancient Greek out there. It's in Italian, not in English. This is still on the same point. Obviously, I haven't really talked that much about it, but I do not speak French. I don't speak German. I want to learn Italian, but I have not learned any of those languages yet. I want to learn German and Italian at some point, so those would be very useful for me to learn, but they don't necessarily have to be the first languages they learn. You learn, but you should probably learn them at some point if you have any interest in them. Like, for example, I am not very interested in learning French. I like a lot of French philosophers, but I don't really have much of an interest in learning French itself. So that's it is how it is. So there's part of me that kind of wants to learn it just to read a couple of philosophy books, but then another part of me is like, you're gonna have to spend at least like 6 months just getting the basics down. Not the basics, but like getting all of the grammar, like understanding all of the grammar. It's gonna take you like another 6 months to actually get pretty good at it. It's gonna take like a year before you can even start to read those books. And is it really worth it just to learn a couple of books in the native language? I mean, that's kind of how I do it for Latin, I suppose, but I really liked it in the first place. So it wasn't, if I were to learn French, it would somewhat be a chore. So, this is kind of a minor little nitpicky point, but deciding what languages you want to learn can be pretty difficult. I mean, that's kind of just a polyglot problem. Like, you're not gonna really have that problem if you're starting out. I mean, you could, but deciding what languages you want to learn, that's more of a problem once you already are there. You know, that's all. First off, that's an issue of time. First of all, you know, like, for example, if you speak Italian and you want to learn Portuguese, or you're also deciding between learning Japanese, learning Portuguese would take a lot less time because there's already a lexical similarity between them, just grammatical similarity. It's just a lot of similarities, so it'd be a lot faster to learn Portuguese than to learn Japanese. So you can take that one way or the other. You could say, oh, learn Portuguese first because that'll be quicker, or you could say learn Japanese first because you get that out of the way, and then Portuguese will be a breeze after that. I don't know. You can see that how you want, but that's kind of a situation you can get yourself into where it's hard to decide what language you want to learn next. Also, just finding a starting point can be hard. Like I brought up earlier, do you want to learn French and German because you want to be able to find more resources in other languages? Do you want to start off with the language you really want to learn? Do you want to start off with an quote-unquote easier language like Tokipona, or a language that's a lot easier for an English speaker than, say, Arabic or something like... Not Arabic is easier, but another language that is easier than Arabic to start off with for an English speaker, you know what I mean? So finding a starting point to begin your polyglot journey can be sort of difficult. Also, again, for the time commitment, you need to remember you need to have time to practice all of these languages. Like, you can't just learn them and then you're done. You have to use them at some point. And I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd just tell you, just find a couple of books, maybe read some articles from the country where it's spoken, maybe listen to some the news or YouTube videos or whatever, something simple where it's not like you have to do something big. I'm not saying you have to go to like a different country or something, just, you know, something that you can kind of keep up, or listen to some music, or find a YouTuber or a podcast. Is it a podcaster? I don't know. Or someone who makes a podcast that you want to listen to, just something that you can actually see yourself doing in your daily life rather than reading a book. Like, you're not going to be reading 5 books at the same time for all in different languages, you know. I mean, you could, and, you know, I'd certainly recommend reading a book in a language at a time, and that can kind of be like your focus for a little bit, but just find something a little more casual to keep up with than something a little bigger like that. So, and again, your memory can start to falter. You know, keeping all those languages in your head, and also you might confuse words in other languages. Maybe they sound similar. This will happen to sound similar, or maybe they're etymologically similar, but they have since changed meanings. Like, for example, I've heard that happens a lot with Hebrew and Arabic, because I think they 30% lexical similarity, I've heard. So a lot of the words have drifted, as in there are more false friends being words that sound similar, or like they are similar, but they have different meanings, than there are words that actually are similar. Now, that can be because their cognates and their meanings have shifted, or it just could be as languages differentiate, they can just pick up new words. Now, if you're talking about like Spanish and Italian, a lot of the words are going to be similar anyway. There might be a couple of words that are a little different, but a lot of the words are going to be similar. Like I said, with Hebrew and Arabic, there are going to be a lot of false friends there, so you might confuse words in similar languages or just in any language. And then also you have to really think about, well, there might be some additional things you have to do. Like I've said, you might want to consider learning another language because they have better or more resources for language you want to learn. I guess a side benefit to that is that if you're learning it in another language, then you're also practicing that other language as well. But on top of that, you'd probably want to learn the IPA if you want to become a polyglot. That's going to be really helpful for getting the sounds right. Like polyglots, I know they have all sorts of techniques to make learning languages easier, to be more precise and be more correct with learning them. I'm not one myself. I'm making my way there. But yeah, I know they have all kinds of strategies for that stuff. So I don't know, go talk to Steve Kaufman or something. So like I said, you probably want to consider learning the IPA. You might want to consider, getting rid of some allophonic differences. I suppose, like, for example, in English, we reduce a lot of our vowels, like can become in a lot of places. So there's a lot of self-inspection you have to do and reflection to get rid of some of those things. And even words like or even those are different in other languages. Like, for example, for words like most languages go to their most central vowel, which typically is not because most languages don't necessarily have Like, for example, in Spanish, it is You don't say you say when you're thinking, or that's their equivalent to Like, even little things like that you have to look out for. You have to be pretty precise. Don't just gloss over stuff. Same thing applies to letters. Do not think that a letter is the same thing. An English R is different from a Spanish R, which is different from a French R. Those are three completely different sounds. Do not confuse them at all. Do not think that they are the same sound. They are different. So I've been talking about some negative things, so let's be a little more positive for a second. Well, first off, different languages expose you to different ways of thinking. I hope that's kind of obvious. Maybe a language you're learning, like Hungarian, has postpositions, and that gets you thinking about things in a different order, a different way. Maybe a different word order. That might get you thinking about what's more important, especially if a language has a free word order. That might really get you thinking about what you find to be the most important. Maybe they have, maybe a one word for something is a combination of two words, and you never thought of it that way before. Like, I've heard that Mandarin has a lot of interesting ones. I don't speak it myself. Obviously, Tokipono would have a lot of those because you had to make those up on your own. Your brain, there's probably more synapses going on there. Once you learn a language, you become better at learning other languages, and I suspect that you just become better at learning things in general, just because you're learning something new. Kind of neutral. It can go either way, but you're probably going to want to learn how to maximize your learning. Which, that can be fun if you want to learn other things, especially if you're like a student. But that can also involve stuff like the dreaded getting a full sleep, not necessarily 8 hours, because that depends on your genetics and whatnot, but you're gonna probably want to maximize your sleep. definitely you're going to want to maximize your diet, maybe even your exercise, because exercise helps with learning. So you're going to so if you really want to get into maximizing your learning, you're going to have to make a lot of lifestyle changes, not just a couple of studying tips, but lifestyle changes to help you learn. And sometimes that can come into conflict with other things. Like, let's say you go to the gym and you're not like an actual bodybuilder, but you want to gain some muscle. That's kind of the opposite of what's best for learning. What's best for learning and for working is being fasted. Not saying you have to fast for like 3 days or something. I mean, you'd be fine if you did that. But, you shouldn't eat a big meal before you start working. I'd give myself about 4, depending on the meal I ate. Like, if it has a lot of carbs, you should wait longer. If it's mostly protein and fat, then you can wait a little bit less. You might even be able to start working, because that's better for the brain than carbs. Like, you have to get into all these little details to maximize stuff like that. But yeah, you really have to get into a lot of stuff to really get good at learning languages. Not just learning the language itself or learning languages, but just at learning in general. Another idea that you might, if you're a guy, you might want to consider is maximizing testosterone, because that would, give you the drive to do that. That's something testosterone's pretty good for. I don't know. As a guy, I don't have a problem with becoming more masculine. I don't really care. I'm not gonna complain. I'm not gonna complain if my testosterone goes up to 2,000 nanograms per deciliter or something. But okay, like obviously 2,000. That's kind of unreasonable. But anyway. Well, yeah, there are a lot of lifestyle changes you have to make in order to really maximize your learning. You're gonna have to stop going on your phone, start just focus on what you're doing. But overall, I think it's a pretty fun journey to go on. Like, overall, for me, the upsides definitely outweigh the downsides. Like, getting to speak to more people around the world, getting to read beautiful pieces of literature, getting to understand other cultures more, getting to have different ways of thinking and more things to think about. That's great. That's amazing. I mean, why wouldn't I want that? I will absolutely encourage anyone to become a polyglot if you're up to the challenge. If you're not, that's fine. Just for me and for other aspiring polyglots or polyglots, it's pretty great. I like it. I think it's fun. I like languages. It's really cool. I mean, again, there's also a philosophical aspect to it, like seeing the way I think, and maybe learning a language might be a flow activity for you. Again, I should probably make a video on that at some point. I noticed there are a lot of video ideas that come up when I talk like this. I start thinking of more and more video ideas that are branched off from this. Like, I brought up the testosterone thing. Maybe I can look into that. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't really care. I can do that. I can't do that. I don't really mind either way. Well, I used to say I can do that. I can also not do that. But yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say. I think it's great to become a polyglot. I definitely encourage you to do it if these slight downsides don't sound bad to you, which they do not sound bad to me at all, then I would totally recommend that you do it. I mean, it opens up more opportunities for your life, and it's pretty fun. Why not? If the next Tokipona video, if I actually get to making that, it should be about Tokipona and polyglottism. Is it polyglottism? I think so. That's the term. So if you're interested in that, if you're a Tokiponist, you want to learn about that, or you're a polyglot and you want to learn more about Tokipona, I would definitely recommend that you check that out. So hopefully this video has been helpful in, there's some things you might not have considered before about becoming a polyglot. Yeah, this has been fun. This is pretty cool. This is pretty great. So if this has helped you with your polyglot journey, then I'm very grateful. No, not grateful. I'm very happy I've been able to help you along with your journey. I wish you the best of luck with any endeavors that you want to go into. And with that, tell your dog I said hi.